We are a war machine. We work and we train purely for the end result, and the end result is to defend your country, or alternatively go out and attack somebody who is endangering your country. This is what we're about.
The best insurance you have that your money is not going to be wasted by the aircraft being broken up is at the same time the pilot will break himself up.
Everybody can drive a car, I suppose, the average person. Most people can fly a plane, but flying a plane from a carrier or being part of the aircrew is different, isn't it?
Stand clear of intake. Start, Buccaneers. Start, Vickers.
An aircraft carrier is just a great big slingshot, catapulting its enormously expensive little thunderbolts about the sky. With 2,500 human stagehands to keep the stars in perpetual rehearsal for a show that can never take place, not with this cast.
You can say we're the cream of the fleet arm in a way, and don't want to be, too bloody minded about it, but you are. You've got the end product. And you are the end product in a way as well. And you're doing what you're paid to do, which is to fly from the deck. I mean, the whole thing is silly to send a thing this size, which costs, Christ knows how much, if you don't fly from the deck in an orderly manner and cram everything you got into the bloody sortie.
Do you want to go on after this downwind, or do you want to... Yes, I quite like this. I should go to that. Would be a good place to go. And then we can...
While the Vixens and the Buccaneers whiz around the sky, somebody's watching the shop. On the bridge, the captain controls the ship. In flight control, the officer called Wings, like Gabriel, deploys his flying men.
The type of young man who joins the Fleet Air Arm is essentially one who has a love of flying and a love of going to sea. And it is this environment of the naval pilot that makes this life different, rather more exciting, and, in my opinion, very much more rewarding. Times of stress, of which there are plenty aboard here, this is when you see men in their true colours, and this is a job which sorts out the men from the boys.
The flight deck is a kind of hell. An armor-plated arena shimmering with heat, haze, and uproar. A mirage, an heroic fantasy.
My life at sea is mainly watchkeeping, day work, sleep and eat. I don't see much daylight. I try to get up in the sun every few days for half an hour at lunchtime, something like that. But most of the time we work quite hard at sea, especially in this sort of ship.
A ship is a ship. That's to say, she is a body which can have a glamorous face and unattractive intestines. Here is where the troglodytes live, the men who make the thing work, who live in the thudding, sweating, reverberating, hypnotizing underground, who make the stinking ship go, where a bucket of ice is melted in a moment. Deep decks below the sky, and even the sea, where men emerge from the tropics, pallid as maggots. Where 50,000 tons of carrier are maneuvered by the tiny movements of minicar controls.
Very good. Starboard 20.
Starboard 20. 20 starboard on, sir.
Very good.
Taking the great ship where? They may well ask.
I think most people's idea of heat is just lying in the sun on a hot beach. Down below, it's enough to dry out the skin. The body can't sweat fast enough often to keep the skin protected from being burnt. The skin goes very dry, it feels just like tight paper. Then, after coming out of machinery space, probably go on sweating for anything up to an hour afterwards. This is really vicious, heavy sweating. Clothing is soaked within a few minutes, and you feel as if you're running at a hard trot all the time. It's quite amazing. It's a thing that it's very difficult to explain. It's something that must be experienced to appreciate what real heat is. In fact, I haven't taken you anywhere hot. I've only taken you places which are at normal working temperatures. We often go around the back of boilers or under boilers. The temperatures get very wicked there, and it's a case of it's impossible to work, it is just too hot. It is very difficult to force yourself to enter these sort of places, they're so hot. We get in there just usually to look at things, check all's well, and then we get out again. You feel after just a few minutes as if you've done a full day's work. It's not only temperature down below, it's noise as well. Noise is incredibly tiring. It makes people very irritable, gets them very upset. They get very tired from heat, from noise, and then they also have to do a job on top. And most of the jobs down below are hard physical labor. Working valves, moving weights around heavy gear, running up and down ladders. It all takes a great amount of effort out here, and after 4 hours, many of the youngsters come up looking absolutely worn out, and they need their 8 hours off just to recover for another watch. This is why few of them do much else at sea other than just watch keep, sleep and eat.
In a carrier, it's hard not to dwell on the intestinal analogy. One moves forever through passages and veins and holes and tubes. The place digests you. Yet, inescapably, it is a society, a community. Within every crevice, something is going on, something is happening.
699, sir.
Goldsmith 170.
596, sir.
Aston 300.
Like people getting paid, for instance. as though corpuscles were to get their wages deep down in the cavities of the body.
280.
Well, what sort of money is this? Hong Kong dollars, that's what it is. What should one be paid in but Hong Kong dollars? That's where we're going, isn't it?
Ash, 870.
Rig, 558, sir.
Rig, 240.
6147.
Morehouse, 150.
Men everywhere. Nothing but men. It's like a gigantic locker room.
There's no denying it that the absence of your family and wife particularly hurts. The separation hurts. On the other hand, we have a considerable amount of fun when we're away. A lot more fun, I think, than our wives have back at home. It's an odd life, but you get used to it, and it's certainly a life I have enjoyed.
Men everywhere. Nothing but men. It's like some sort of awful metal monastery.
All your training's geared to make you an adaptable person who can live with other people and not go and have quarrels with everybody and sulk and things. It's just not possible. I suppose the English stiff upper lip is not a bad thing when it comes to living in that sort of environment.
This really is HMS claustrophobia. You never seem to be able to get out of this great metal box. The sky and the sea are up there somewhere, I suppose, but you hardly ever see them. The only place you can poke your head out is the flight deck. Probably get it knocked off by a buccaneer. It's like going for a cruise in the underground. It may be raining or shining, I don't know. I hardly know whether it's day or night. Doesn't seem to matter much anyhow.
Dear President, happy birthday to you. We went to the zoo, and we saw a pink elephant, and we thought it was you.
Who's got a knife?
The Chief Petty Officer's Mess is where the action is. An all-male society insists on conviviality. It's a clubroom with nowhere to go, where a joke is something to be valued and applauded. It doesn't even have to be a good one. It will stay within these walls. Where else could it go?
Is that proper?
I told you not to use too much screen.
Got a hacksaw!
Never live to play the violin again.
Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed, gents. This is my favourite flower, a cauliflower.
There's one other thing, Mr. President. We were too high so to buy you a proper birthday card from the canteen, so they asked me to make one up for you.
Oh, it's a lovely big one, isn't it?
I think that's very nice indeed, chaps. Very nice indeed. Indeed.
There's lovely for you, boyo.
There's another page as well.
I like it. He's a jolly good fellow. He's a jolly good fellow. He's a jolly good fellow.
I could never live in a place like this. Once you're in the ship, it is a place. It isn't a vehicle. It's just a section of a great vertical labyrinth. Not even the inhabitants understand it, I'm sure. People have lived here together for months without even recognizing each other. You meet a man one day and you never see him again. People, after all, are only here by courtesy in a way. It's just that the planes, apparently, can't do without them. Yet.
This is the upper hangar. This is our home. You can see what it's like in here. When the forward lift comes down, we all nip forward and get a bit of sunburn. And then back to business again.
A great, clanging, oil-smelling, spanner-banging, floating garage. That's what it is. Here the vixens and the buccaneers come to roost, collapsing into metal bats with folded wings, to be groomed and squired and cosseted by their valets, nourished and doctored and repaired down to the smallest nerve endings of their transistorized psychology. And should any of that go wrong, since one thinks of everything, to the packing of the parachutes. All for this, so that this thing can safely land again. You can watch this strange, screaming, airborne ballet for days, the skill, the competence, and the spectacle, without really believing that inside each of these impersonal, outrageous things is a man. There is a man inside. Last night you drank with him and talked with him. What is he now? A component. There is, however, a man who was kicked off the deck from 0 to 200 knots in 3 seconds and who brought his mad contraption back onto a moving tennis court. Now he reverts to human form. Now he returns to the human race. Not without a terrible transition. Look how an hour or two of aerial imprisonment has made a haggard man. Now he's shedding his armor, breaking his umbilical cords. It's like watching a birth. Nothing happened except routine. In this job, you live by routine, one supposes.
And after lift drivers close up, lift to upper hangar levels.
In an hour, he will be a man again, in his wardroom makeup, with all a man's illusions, surrounded by other men.
In a word, what is it like to make a profession out of flying a buccaneer? Does it make you feel like one?
Make me feel like a buccaneer? No, it doesn't, no. We're not the pirate kings. No, it's a modern, complicated aeroplane. And it has to be flown professionally. It's no good flying it in the scarf out of the cockpit routine, which was there when I took up flying, but it isn't there now. I think very few people don't have butterflies in their stomach when they're walking out to their aircraft or in the briefing. But on the whole, you lose them once you have the straps put round you.
Well, it's like getting on a stage.
Yes.
Once you're working on the stage, you're not so worried, but beforehand you're terrified.
It depends on what you're doing in this halter, but at night flying, for instance, certainly the tension's a lot higher, but once you're strapped in, it seems to go, and you don't notice the tension until you finish debriefing.
bar of his.
Hey, Fred.
Anything on that straight away. Yes.
Slightly tight, so overshot the grid slightly. Lined up to his right. Got on the Roger, went a little high. You nearly got to hold your attitude. And you helped it down.
Well,
yeah. You adjusted with the pole, which I reckon you're a bit fast.
Approach to this.
And you took one wire.
Fine. Thanks.
Rory?
High.
High around the corner. Down on the Roger. You looked a little fast, were you?
Yeah, just a wee bit fast.
And back on the Roger, and you helped it down into one wire as well. Probably made you a little faster. Great.
How sweet it is.
Yeah. You'll give yourself one, no doubt.
It's over for today. The tension's turned off. You can see them visibly change their natures. Now it's analysis. No one's ever asked how he felt. He's only told the mistakes he made. How else could you survive?
Fine then. The launch was okay. We were off a couple of minutes early, if anything. And then we went up to 3,000 feet to clear the cloud. We then did our FOT runs. The first one was a wee bit too close to the ship. The second one was okay. And we then put you inside us and everything went okay. Rather an awkward camera to use, evidently. After going away from the ship there, we went down south and went towards Horsburgh Light to go to a very complicated St. John crossing. Then through Changi Approach, over to Singapore Centre, across St. John Beacon, through Tenga Approach. On the Point Charlie you could see the road going up, and you could see Point November where we had to tell off. The Vixens were a bit wrong at this stage.
I must say I wonder what it really means. I don't mean the secret language, the arcane shorthand of the trade. I mean the whole reason for doing this at all, now that they know it's only part of an endless rehearsal for a performance that nobody wants to see.
And we were then told to contact Fortune 11.
They're so young, aren't they? I've got a son older than some of these. None of these men has ever killed anyone. They'd be aghast if I told them to do so, yet that's what they're paid to do. There's a sort of a formula here I don't understand.
The only thing I would say on this, Rory, is the objective of orbital is to stay above ground fire. We were down about 2,000 feet a lot of the time, which is not above ground fire distance. Okay? So about 3,500 feet, I'd make it a wee bit slower. You don't give yourself very much chance if you make it too fast.
Yeah, agreed, but we were brief 1,500 feet went away for small arms fire.
Yes.
Okay, so that's why...
that's very, very small arms fire. In the end, fuel and time made us leave the area.
Right, well, here we are cruising up and down the China Sea and flying our aeroplanes up and down. Do you really think that in peacetime that this serves any purpose at all?
Yes, I do really, because you've got to keep men in training. The country's never going to go completely kaput as far as the Navy's concerned. You've got to keep the Navy going.
Well, in that case, this is all one great big long rehearsal, isn't it?
Well, this is why we do exercises in the first place. Just in case something did happen.
Just exercise.
This is your life. You've chosen this life. And the whole object of the operation is to maintain all like aircraft in a serviceable readiness condition, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, doesn't it sometimes bother you that nothing ever happens?
No, but it does happen. It's happening every day. There's exercise and they're doing these exercises all the time.
Yeah, but that's just exercising for the sake of exercising.
The trouble is in the country at the moment that people don't realise that there is wars going on all over the world. They think because World War II's finished, they think that was an end of it. They don't realise that there's people getting killed all over the world.
Yes, but John, the only war that's going on around here we're not in.
Well, that's 100 miles off our port side at the moment.
Exactly.
Vietnam.
Precisely. But we're not having anything to do with that.
What?
Do you think we ought to be?
No, I don't think we ought to.
The way they are, we could be...
We might be
pretty
tomorrow.
quickly.
Well, supposing we were, supposing they suddenly turned this ship round and went into the Gulf of Tonkin with the 7 fleet, how would you feel about that?
Well, I would do what I was told to do, as I'm meant to. I'm in the Navy. I joined the service to be a serviceman and to serve my country. I would do exactly what I was told to do.
We'd be doing exactly the same there as we are doing now, in fact.
I mean, we wouldn't like it. We wouldn't like going in at all. But if they said you've got to go in, well, you've got to go in, that's it.
In your heart of hearts, wouldn't that exhilarate you?
Yes, because it's always something you wanted to do. Really, that's what you've been trained for all along.
And that's why you joined in the first place, fundamentally, isn't it, really?
Well, I suppose it's the route of joining, to go to war. I suppose war is my profession.
122, going 4 122, you're loud and clear, humming.
And then there comes the night, and it's even harder. Where are we, for God's sake? Just a cluster of lights.
Okay, slightly low again. Little power. Coming up for the Roger on the Roger.
Vixen 124 on, sir.
Vixen 124 on deck.
Up there at night, after all, this may be the biggest ship in the fleet, but it's still a very small piece of ironmongery floating on a great desert of salt water, isn't it? It must be terribly lonely.
No, we have an observer with you nowadays. I never used to. This is the first aircraft I've flown with somebody to talk to in the aircraft with you. But you're not often silent. You can say you're talking on the radio to the ship or ashore.
122, right now heading 030. 131, you're loud and clear. Check 2 stick.
Night flying, well, it's aerial business. I think it is. You know, as a crew, you've got to work together. You're dependent on the ship a lot. Because, I mean, your field of vision, for a start, is very restricted at night because, A, the darkness itself, and also you've got to be blacked out. If you can't have white floodlights, this sort of thing affects your night vision. And you rely on a lot of people you don't see. Catapult teams, resting gear teams, flight deck teams, operations teams, Ds, you know, this sort of thing, who control you in the air at night, keep you away from other aircraft, form the ship's movements. Well, you don't know where you are, you see, do you, until you've actually bolted. You know you haven't caught a wire. Yeah, really. That's the when I used to be in Vixens, you know, you can hardly see a damn thing. Buccaneers is much better because your vision is much better.
The Gannet's at a mile and a half. Would you like him on first or last?
Last.
Roger.
Gannet 071 on.
Gannet 071 on deck.
I mean, I have been in ships that people have been killed. In fact, 14 years ago, on this particular ship, when I was on the flight deck here, there was a very good friend of mine was killed, and I was only standing a few yards from him. So accidents do happen.
Stand by for respot. Strike down Vixen 124 after lift. Range Gannet 070. On the forward lift, strike down Gannet 071.
Upper hangar.
Flight deck standby to respot.
Vixen 133
Range Gannet 71 forward lift. Range Vixen 133 after lift. Forward and after lift drivers close up.
Down to 4 spot.
It's the biggest warship in the British Navy. 50,000 tons of intricate ironmongery at a cost of roughly £1 million a thousand. It's the home of nearly 3,000 people. It's a floating flying field for more than 40 aircraft, which is its sole and only purpose. Guns, guided missiles, and things even more complicated. 800 feet long and 120 feet wide, 22 years old and finished.
And this is partly the reason why. Every few days of an aircraft carrier's life, there's a ceremony, a ritual called a RAS, replenishment at sea. It's an agreeable and indeed a sociable sight when the fleet auxiliaries nestle around to feed and revive and nourish this great floating factory. Her needs are far from small, I can assure you. This ship's daily appetite is 1,000 tons of flour, 600 pounds of bread, nearly 2 tons of potatoes, 1,100 pounds of meat, 22 gallons of rum, 4,000 cans of beer, and so on. The statistics are wearisome and grotesque. And all this is nothing to do with the oil and the fuel to keep our floating factory alive. Perhaps that is the answer to the aircraft carrier mystique. The great thing can't endure a single week alone. That's why it's doomed. Somebody far away can do it all with a button. Obviously, the Navy's got to change.
It is a very small, very efficient force, and perhaps these carriers have outlived their original purpose.
But I think we can't afford, we're still the third biggest navy in the world, so it doesn't really matter what we do with it. And I mean, the Russians have never had carriers, and they don't seem to do too bad at all.
I don't think that really it makes very much difference to me as captains, whether it's the last aircraft carrier or whether it isn't. The job to do is still the same. The people that one has to do it with are the same. And apart from perhaps a feeling of sadness that an era is changing, I don't think it colours my actions or my outlook very much indeed at all.
Well, look, you've got something like 2,500 men under your command of all kinds and of all backgrounds. It's almost like the population of a small country town that you control here. Now, what's the future for them?
I don't think you want to over-dramatise the effects of the change of emphasis in the Navy. The naval strategy and the naval ships have been constantly changing over the years, and I don't think you want to build up the removal of the carriers into a great dramatic event, and everything's going to suddenly change overnight. It's not. The Navy will go on, and the Navy will continue to do a very good job. It'll continue to do the job that it's required to do, in a different sort of way. There'll be different sort of ships, and those ships will be carrying aircraft, but there'll be different sort of aircraft.
I can't get rid of the impression that I'm in a very decent and orderly boarding school. The behaviour, the tradition, the little personal rules, all this is completely embedded in the British way of life. It just is part of us. The captain was right, it'll go on somehow. I suppose in our hearts, most of us want it that way.
We're a maritime race. The Navy, of course, looks after the merchant Navy, always has done. And if you look back over the last 20 years, you'll see that the carrier has been the most effective item in the war armament which supports the political strategy of the day.
I like the bit where he staggers out at the end.
Oh, you know, that come on. So we're not here to decide the rights and wrongs of the case, because this is political. We are militarists, and we, of course, do as we're told.
And why, I'd like to know, should I affect to be critical? They were very kind to me. They believe in what they're doing. Maybe I don't, but they do. It's their business to believe, as I suppose it's mine to wonder. I'm not necessarily right, but by God, neither are they.
Let us pray. O God, who hast knit together in one family all the nations of the earth, remove far from us, we beseech thee, the menace of war. Pour out upon the rulers of the peoples thy spirit of peace. Restrain the passions of such as plan aggression, and hasten the time when the kingdoms of this world shall become the kingdom of thy Son, our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
You couldn't really have a navy at all without this, could you? I mean, at some point in this syndrome, you have to invoke God or something resembling God, or the whole thing would be preposterous. Service, duty, patriotism, morality, continuity, the concept of being a chosen people out of which a navy was born in the first place, as an extension of ourselves. I expect it will outlast the carriers. What a solitary man is the boss. What a lonely man is the captain. The exercises are over. We're now on course for Hong Kong. The aircraft are gone from the flight deck. At last there's room to play and time to think. The captain must think by himself. By necessity, he lives alone. Around him, a microcosm of Britain exists, trapped in steel walls. And now those steel walls are doomed. Yet by our own argument, this enormous ship is symbolic of the nation. How far can we take that analogy? What do they think, the men whose life it is, with a future so imponderable?
England, I think it's on a lower grade at the moment. But through years, say 4 or 5 years, not just 12 months ahead, 4 or 5 years' time, if every man does a fair day's work, he ain't got to go slugging on, but a fair day's work for a fair day's pay, he'll be right on top of it again. But that's what he's got to do.
What about you? Well, I think that every country has its great times, and every country must have its slump. We've just come from Australia. At the moment, they're having a good time. But there'll come a time when they have a real slump, just the same as we're having at the moment. But you can't just keep going on and on and on and gaining. You've got to stop and then go downhill a bit. But I think with the people that we've got in the UK, I don't think they're all idle, as some people think they are. And I think if they do a fair day's work for a fair day's money, Britain will be on the up and up.
I still think England's best. It's definitely best, but I must argue with him about everybody doing a lot of work. I come from the Midlands, and I know the few rackets that go on about nipping in there, clocking on, rushing around the back and playing brag all day.
You're going to stay in the Navy?
I'm going to stay in the Navy as long as possible.
Good. But you're not?
Well, I'm in for 22 years, but I go out with a pension at 40. Good old Britain. They'll pay me my pension, and then I go to Australia.
You know, I think it's about time we stop looking after the other countries. You know, be selfish about it, because who's going to look after us? I mean, all these countries that we've given aid to, the times that we've had troops go in to sort out their problems and many other things. And what are they doing now? Are they interested in us? No, they're slamming the door, aren't they? And so therefore, I think we ought to let them get on with it.
At the end of the war, we were in a tough spot because we owed a lot of money. And we just have never got out of owing the money. At the same time, I think we've tended to sit back and think, well, we won the war, we must be better than the people that lost the war.
I don't know, it's like a mother when their kids grow up and go out to work, they don't want nothing to do with her anymore. This seems to be the rest of the world is treating Britain now. Nobody seems very interested in England and the English, you know. There's probably a little bit of jealousy. I think England's a state of mind more than anything else, you know. Being English, anyway, is a state of mind.
I would add, and I do really believe this, that the country should be extremely grateful that it has young, dedicated men who are prepared to serve in this environment, flying all over the world, day and night, without any projected future.
So there she goes, 50,000 tons of carrier. There, leaving Hong Kong, is the quite graceful and dignified and inevitable end of what we came to call east of Suez. There goes the last of the gunboats. She'll almost certainly never come back. We'll never come back, not in the way we used to think of ourselves. Well, it had to happen someday. I suppose there are probably plenty of waves to rule west of Suez, but do we want to rule them anyhow? I don't particularly. The thousands of young chaps in that ship can be pretty sure of another sort of future in the Navy, if they want it. But nobody seems to have decided what sort of a future Britain wants.
But whatever happens, we shall still be a small island in the middle of an awful lot of sea, and we shall still be provisioned by ships. We shall obviously be needing a navy for a long while yet.